friends, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of Gateway, let me extend a very warm welcome to every one of you for finding the time to be here on a Sunday afternoon, especially on a long weekend. I'm sure it would be worthwhile. I welcome and thank Professor Rohan Gunaratna for being with us and spending his valuable time with us this evening. I met Professor Gunaratna last weekend when he was invited to speak at the Sri Lanka Muslim Civil Society. In fact, that's when I got to know him. So it was all arranged within a week. Immediately after his talk, I went to him and told him I would love to arrange a forum for the educationists and the professionals. And he was very kind, he obliged, and he flew in this morning from Singapore for this event. Thank you, Professor Gunaratna. Dr. Rohan Gunaratna is a professor of security studies at the Nanyang Technological University in Singapore and co-author of the 3 pillars of reconciliation: needs, narratives, and networks, published by the Oxford University Press. He wrote the blueprint to establish the Institute of National Security Studies of Sri Lanka, the think tank of the Ministry of Defense in Sri Lanka. Ladies and gentlemen, the time has come to ask ourselves whether we continue to leave everything in the hands of the politicians. I would like to very briefly share my experiences in relation to the field of education. I was born in the mid-1960s to 2 government school teachers. My father, a few years later, was picked to start a new school. He was given a piece of land called Kumbikale, but very fortunately, that time he had the freedom to do whatever he wanted as this new principal. So he decided to start this school with 5 classes, 3 Sinhala medium, 1 Tamil medium, and 1 English medium. Thereby, we had a very good mix of Sinhalese, Muslims, and Tamils. He was asked to choose a motto for the school, and what he chose was country before self. The school grew very well, and when it came to the higher classes, he had to make decisions to appoint head prefects. The first head prefect of the school was Sujeeva Alvis. Second was Mohideen Kader, who is here. And third was Kathiramale Sriparam. After a few years, the Buddhist parents came to him and said, "Sir, we want to start a Buddhist shrine room." And he said, "Great idea. I really want to do that. But if I am to do that, I also want to start shrine rooms for Christians, Islam, and the Hindus." The parents weren't happy. The Buddhist parents went in delegation to meet the then president, Mr. Ranasinghe Premadasa. And one day, Mr. Premadasa called him to Sucharita and asked, "Mr. Alice, what are you trying to do?" Then he said, my father said, "Sir, mine is a school, not a Buddhist, nor a Christian, nor a Muslim school. Please allow me to do what I want. This is the philosophy I want to have in this country." Mr. Premadasa thought for a while and said, "Go ahead, Mr. Alice, go and do it." Today, I believe D.S. Senanayake College probably is the only school that has 4 shrine rooms for the 4 religions. After a few years, my father was sent out of the school by a Sinhala politician who was not happy that he didn't carry out his orders with regards to certain admissions. Had he not done that, I'm sure he would have retired as the principal of D.S. Senanayaka College. He was almost jobless for about 2 to 3 years, aimless and idling, when he was called by the Muslim community to join as the head of Zaira College. Zaira was in a bad state that time. We have the principal of Zaira College here. My father worked very hard. Zaira improved. I still remember the birthday cards he used to get from the young Zairians, referring to him as our father, Muhammad Alas. And he was very popular. But after 4 years, the governors of Zaira College, there were a few politicians and leaders of the Muslim community. They called him and said, Mr. Alas, we want you to stay, but you have to serve under a Muslim principle. Then he said, no, that's against my conscience. And he quit. Had it not happened, he would have retired as the principal of Zaira College. So the politicians or the leaders are no different, whether they are Sinhalese or Muslims. He then started, sometimes all these things lead to good things as well. If not, we wouldn't have had Gateway College. So he thought the best is to start his own school, and he started Gateway College. And there, it was a little different because it was co-ed. We had girls as well. And that's the school we all take forward, but carry on his vision, the same ethos. Gateway, you just saw how we do things with regards to religion, but we are starting to have a few challenges. We are a school that believe in one uniform, but very recently, and it's growing unfortunately, there's a lot of opposition. People come and say, no, we want to dress differently. But we say uniform is uniform. And that's not too much for any school to ask for. Sometimes the principals are faced with situations where they say, you give it to us in writing, we'll take you to court. But we've somehow overcome up to date. We are also a school where we would like Christians to take part in Bhakti Gita and Muslims to sing carols. These things were happening 10, 20 years ago. But again, there's a lot of resistance. Sometimes they even boycott. This forum is going to be open, and I'm sure none of us here who are professionals are going to feel bad. The Muslim community that is here, who I think are the real Muslims, you will agree, such requests are not unreasonable, not by any means. We need to think differently. Where do we stand now? It was only beginning of April that I had discussions with an Australian university, and they were very keen to go in for a joint venture with me. In our discussions, I said, Sri Lanka is the safest place in the world. That was the beginning of April. But in my own lifetime, in 70s and 80s, we experienced Sinhala terrorism. We have to call it Sinhala terrorism. 80s, 90s, 2000s, we had Tamil terrorism. And now we have Muslim terrorism. Goes to show, terrorists are terrorists. They have no race, they have no religion. But just last Tuesday, when we reopened school, I was, along with my teachers at Gateway College, Colombo, near the entrance, welcoming children. The primary kids started to come. There was this vehicle that drove in. The father opened the door and wanted the little child, 7-year-old child, to get down. This child was howling. She was saying, I can't, I'm so scared, I can't. And the father almost had to force the child to get down. It's then that I thought that we have still a lot to learn. But just not learn. I think we need to unlearn and relearn. I invite Professor Gunaratna to deliver his talk. Thank you.